so hopefully you'll see some of it in
Oh,
Austin.
good.
So.
Okay, excellent. Just as a gentle reminder that at the bottom of the hour, we have to go to Dr. Pepe's call. So we'll have everyone just keep an eye on that time. Sometimes we go a couple minutes over, but we try to be cautious of that time.
We're planning for about 20 minutes to allow for questions. Mandy!
Perfect.
Mandy's here.
Oh, where's Mandy? Let's see. Mandy.
The fabulous lady.
Let's see. Mandy, are you... Can we see you yet, Mandy, or not? How do you know she's here? I don't see her.
No, she's here.
You know what? I can see you guys.
I don't
okay.
see you. Oh, there you are.
Okay, perfect. Good.
You have been discovered. Well done.
That's relieving because technology is not my favorite thing in the world. So,
especially Microsoft Teams, we all hate it. And we only use it because the next meeting is a Zoom call, and so Dr. Jameson is kind enough to stream this Teams call onto the Zoom call because you cannot do 2 Zoom calls at once, apparently. So that's how we have it. And are we waiting for Justin, or is it just you both?
He was going to pop in, I think, just to, if there was any sort of specific questions about the analysis, because he took lead on that. But
okay, perfect.
We can for sure. We have to wait on him.
Okay, excellent. All righty, and then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get, so we do give some CME for today, and I'm gonna pop that on the thing real quick. Let's see here, CME. I got it right here. I will post that in the chat for everybody to see. All righty, so we are good. And I see that we are recording. Yes, we are. Thank you, Angus. Oh, good. Awesome. All right, and are you guys okay with this being recorded? We put it up on our YouTube channel. You get a lot more views there. You good with that?
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. All right, so let's get started. It's 3 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. It is Tuesday, May 30th, 3 p.m. This is a Florida EMS webinar. We have now over, I believe, 110 talks by incredible presenters. This has been probably one of the most fun roles that I've adopted, is finding these incredible people out there on the internet who have been so kind with their time and their information to come and pop in remotely and provide us with a recent publication or more than one publication that they're working on. And today is no different in that we have an incredible group of folks from Canada. Again, we've had a few of our Canadian colleagues come on. A very important topic that we have discussed a number of times on this webinar, which is violence against paramedics. It's a serious health problem. There's not just physical harm, but the psychological harm. And, you know, a lot of times our organizations just say this is just part of the job. However, we have a group of people today who will prove that to be incorrect, and it will show us what they're doing about it. So without any further ado, today we have on the program Dr. Elizabeth Donnelly, Dr. Justin Mausz, and more. Mandy, are you also at the PhD doctorate?
No, I'm a paramedic.
Okay, so which is great, paramedic Mandy Johnston. So if I can, I'll turn it over to you guys, and I'll turn it over to you guys to make some further introductions. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and then we cannot wait to hear the talk. So take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Mandy, do you want to open up the slides while I start saying hello? Hi there. My name is Elizabeth Donnelly. I am just delighted to be here as a representative of the Violence Against Paramedics research group, and we're going to talk a little bit about this program that we're all supporting in different ways. I want to just acknowledge first off that this isn't a pure research presentation. This is honestly a workforce health initiative that was developed by paramedics for paramedics. And so There's research attached to it, and we're going to bring that forward. But mostly, I wanted you to hear from Mandy and hear about this incredible work she's done, and then we'll talk about what we know because of her work toward the tail end. So thank you so much for your time and your attention, and I'll let Mandy introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Mandy Johnston. I'm an advanced care paramedic, and I'm a paramedic superintendent in the region of Peel, which is Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon, about 1.5 million people that live just west of Toronto. I began leading the External Violence Against Paramedic Work Group when I was a frontline paramedic about 4.5 years ago now, and it's developed quite a lot as a program since. And because of that, we have been able to collect a lot of data that Justin and Elizabeth analyzed to prevent future violence. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you guys about it. It is probably my favorite topic. Justin, did you want to go?
Hi, I'm Justin. I'm excited to be here as well. I'm a clinician scientist with the Region of Peel's Paramedic Services in Ontario, Canada. Region of Peel, like Mandy said, is just a bit to the left of Toronto, and Ontario is sort of in the middle of the country. This is really great work. Super excited to be sharing with you with it today, and looking forward to a good discussion.
Can everybody see the slides okay? Are they full size? And yeah, okay, perfect.
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. All right. So like you already said, Peter, we are talking about violence in paramedicine. I have been a paramedic for 18 years, like I said, and I've experienced a lot of violence while as a paramedic on the road. I'd say the worst incident, my partner was strangled. My partner and I were being chased when police arrived scene and pulled their guns. We thought we were going to watch a shooting happen in front of us. But those weren't the incidents that were actually what started the External Violence Against Paramedic Work Group. So when you look at the screen here and you look at the things that are said to this office worker, be it a teacher, somebody who's an accountant, whomever, a lawyer, this is a quote. This is something that a patient said to a paramedic while on offload delay. And is it normal for these things to be said to anybody in any other profession? And if it's not, which we know it's not, then why is it normal for those things to be said, or why is it acceptable for those things to be said to a paramedic? And this was the question that I posed at our Ontario Association of Chief conference last fall. And the initial question and conversation that I had with my superintendent 5 years ago when EVAP began. So EVAP started as myself, one voice, who explicitly spoke up and told my superintendent that it is not an expected or tolerated part of the profession to experience violence at work. There are laws in place that require an employer deal with violence. If my partner at home was assaulting me, verbally abusing me in any way, and my employer suspected that, they legally have an obligation to speak up and do something about it. So when I'm treated that way at work, why is it that I'm told to let something roll off my back, shake it off, or just move on? Because they would never tell me that in my personal life. And so it was that conversation that I had with the superintendent that led to the development of the External Violence Against Paramedic Work Group. I, having worked here for a long time, being a large service, have a lot of friends who you'll see on the left, who are all paramedics. They are, most of them, married to each other. My husband's also a paramedic in that picture. So I work every single day with people that I love and I care about. Now, as a superintendent, I have 800 coworkers, but 30 who I'm responsible for on any given day. And I don't want any of the people that I love, that I care about, or that I'm responsible for to experience any verbal abuse, sexual harassment, or physical assault while they're at work. So my one voice became 196 voices, because when I spoke up to the employer, I said that, well, this was something that bothered me. I didn't know how other paramedics in Peel Region felt about it. So when we surveyed our staff, we had about a 33% response rate, and 196 people replied to the survey. When I got those survey results, I immediately contacted Justin to help with the data analysis, because the experiences that paramedics talked about and the emotions or the impact that they had had because of those experiences, not just at work, but their personal lives, were so powerful and so upsetting that we had to do something very meaningful with the information that they had given us. So Justin and I came up with 6 recommendations based on that initial study and research that we did in Peel Region, and we presented to our leadership team. Our chief, Peter Dundas, who's retiring today, he took me to Peel Regional Council, that picture on the right, and those 6 recommendations that Justin and I had made, I presented to council so that we had their support in implementing every single one of them. So my one voice speaking up became 196, and those 196 voices you'll see resulted in a lot of change. One of the things that we learned in our initial study is that violence experienced by paramedics was widespread. So it was enacted in many forms, be it verbal abuse through to physical assault. It happened so frequently in the course of a paramedic's career that they thought that it was too chronic to report. It happens too frequently. Who has the time to report all of these incidents? And so if the violence is happening in so many forms and so frequently, paramedics would deem it as being unpreventable. Also, people who they stated were enacting the violence were people who were under the influence often of drugs or alcohol. And so they deemed that this was an unpreventable experience. There's often no consequences for the perpetrators of violence. People spoke about police excusing or not charging the people who had assaulted them. And so being that violence is so widespread, the fact that paramedics believe it's unpreventable, and there was no consequence for the perpetrator, violence just became a normal and expected part of the job that has existed in our profession for 40 plus years. If something is part of the job, we don't typically document the normal things that happen day to day. Paramedics were not documenting. There was no purposeful place for them to document. They didn't see the point, and they didn't believe that would create anything meaningful. There would be no change. So what's the point? And I can't tell you how many times when Justin and I were analyzing those first results or that first survey or study, we read, nothing will change. What's the point? And that's it, part of the job. So we were not the only people to learn that paramedics experience violence and that it goes unreported. A previous study to us in Canada, done in both Ontario and Nova Scotia, surveyed about 1,600 paramedics. It was found that in that past year, 75% of paramedics had experienced violence, but 81% had never reported. In Peel, we had asked paramedics about violence encounters over the course of their career. So 98% had said that they experienced an incident of violence, and only 40% said that they had documented an incident of violence in the career. So what's the problem with not reporting? If paramedics aren't reporting violence, we can't provide them with the support that they deserve. We can't provide them with psychological support. We're not tracking a known cause of psychological injury in the paramedics workplace. And without any data, the employer cannot do anything to mitigate future incidents of violence because they don't understand the circumstance, the context under which it applies. And without knowing that, there's nothing that you can do to address it in the future or stop it. So everybody is faced with a dilemma. Reporting violence is very important if we want to change an organizational culture of tolerance or part of the job. But in order for a paramedic to deem reporting as worth it, the employer has to demonstrate that the organization's culture is going to change. So in Peel, we developed a pretty comprehensive strategy to address the violence that paramedics experience. We wanted to make clear to them that it is not an acceptable or tolerated part of the job. And with every single new initiative that we launched, we would constantly communicate to paramedics and remind them that it was because of their reporting to us, that 196 voices, that we were now able to give them zero tolerance signs in the ambulance like they asked for. We launched a public awareness campaign that was a paid social media campaign a few years back. We developed a harassing client letter process in which we actually send harassing client letters to people who perpetrate violence numerous times, which we track through external violence incident reports. We created a zero tolerance for violence from the public policy. We pointed out to our regional employer that their policy resulted in call 911. And so it just was not really applicable to our circumstance and our work environment. We gave paramedics spit hoods and soft restraints, which are to this day one of the most appreciated and most cost-effective things that we did. We started a collaboration with Peel Regional Police, which is quite extensive and has been very beneficial. I won't go into detail, but if any of you want to ask me questions about it later, I'm happy to share. We've been advocating for legislative changes at a federal level. So we have been working with our regional partners and council, and we've been writing letters or championing bills, one that's currently in Parliament, to make assault against paramedics and frontline workers an aggravated circumstance when it comes to sentencing. And most importantly, well, I did not understand it was the most important thing that we would do when we started 4 years ago, we developed the External Violence Incident Report. And as an organization and for paramedics, it is probably the most important tool that we developed and what will mitigate the majority of violence in the future. When we built the External Violence Incident Report, we addressed every single cultural barrier to reporting. So paramedics said that it would take too much time and be cumbersome to report every incident. And we made sure that it was filled with checkboxes and drop downs. We only provided one free text section so that it was quick for them to complete. We made sure that it had multifunctions, so they're only doing one document instead of many. So it counts as the Paramedics Ministry of Health incident report. It is our hazard flag for flagging repeat offenders of violence in their households. It tracks a paramedic's cumulative exposure. So if they make a workplace injury claim due to multiple incidents or even a singular incident of violence, we are able to search their name, go back, and in their report, we can actually write every single date and the type of violence they were exposed to. It is information for the employer to actually address, track violence, address trends, find trends, and then prevent future violence. And in that way, it has actually been really effective. And it's data for research, which Justin and Elizabeth worked very, very hard on. So we did all of these things and created one form to carry or pull a lot of weight, but be very superintendent and very paramedic friendly to support the culture change. So we started from a place where paramedics believed that violence was unpreventable. So I want to tell you a story and a really great example of how we were able to leverage multiple parts of the EVAP program that we created and reporting in the External Violence Incident Report to actually address family or two brothers who were incredibly high risk to paramedics. So over a 3-month period, from September to December, I started receiving complaints from superintendents and from paramedics about twin brothers who were incredibly threatening, verbally abusive, but posed really high risk to paramedics as they were constantly threatening physical violence. They had even managed to trap paramedics in a room while pushing police out and held them contained in that space for a while until police could break in. It was really upsetting to paramedics. They were very fearful. They said many of them, having worked 20 years, had never experienced anything like this in their lives or in their career. So what we did is we looked at our EPCRs, so our patient documentation over a 3-month period, and we found that we had been called to this address 30 times. Those 30 calls resulted in 11 external violence incident reports, and 24 paramedics were involved in those 11 external violence incident reports. So that documented for us a trend of behavior that needed to be addressed. With that information, we went to the region's legal and privacy teams. Privacy gave us the right to post pictures in our stations because this person was calling from addresses not their own, since they learned their address was flagged. We worked with legal to send harassing client letters to 2 members of the family, which proved to be highly effective. We worked with our risk and audit team because the people were routinely complaining about paramedics, and we're also lodging complaints with the Ministry of Health. So based on these 11 documented incidents, we were actually able to stop the investigations, even the investigations at the Ministry of Health level. And we collaborated with Peel Regional Police. So we actually worked with them to change the way that they respond to the call, the way that their dispatch and our dispatch communicated and tiered police, paramedics, superintendents, and sergeants to the call. And they agreed to lay charges. Those charges were laid about 1.5 years ago. Since that date, when the harassing client letters were received and the charges were laid, we have never had one more external violence incident report completed, and our call volume dropped significantly. So there was an instantaneous response to those letters that we sent and our collaboration with police, as well as the charges. It wasn't just a good outcome for us because the patient was diverted through mental health court. And what that meant was his charges were held for a 2-year period, and he's now receiving mandatory mental health training or mental health courses, treatment, medications, and getting the help he needs. And so it was really a positive story for paramedics, for police services, and for the patient and the family themselves. That is not the only incident. We've had some recently, and I think it's really important to know that addressing violence is very complicated, and in order to properly address it, it really requires collaboration of multiple departments, like I said, and utilizing different aspects of the program to address the situation at risk, whatever it might be. So we started at a place that we only one paramedic speaking up about the violence they experienced. That was me. My voice became 196 paramedics. And then to date, as of a week or two ago, the last time I looked, we have over 1,100 external violence incident reports completed. We surveyed Peel paramedics recently because we wanted to do a program evaluation. And one of the paramedics said, "I understand the value of reporting to support change within the profession. Even if not impacted myself, I file reports to keep my coworkers safe. I see the efforts of the service to address violence and appreciate them. Reporting is me doing my part." Overwhelmingly, when I speak to paramedics and I do incident debriefs with them following violent encounters or high-risk encounters, they speak to their gratitude for the program. They speak openly about their experience and, most importantly, how it actually impacted them in a psychological way. And they're willing to contribute or want their experience to contribute to the continuous growth or development of the program. And so that's why these over 1,100 reports that we have now and the 900 or so that Justin and Elizabeth analyzed are very important, because they are actual data and information that we've never had previously in this profession that can drive process, policy, training, and actual future change.
Okay, so I think this is where I came in. I had met Justin a while back, and he was telling me about this initiative that Peel Region was undertaking. And I, being a researcher, got super excited because everything that's been done up till now is sort of retrospective, like how often has this happened to you in the last 6 months, in the last year, in your lifetime, and everyone's memory gets a little fuzzy over time. And so the fact that we had point of event reporting is really novel and really, really powerful. And it allowed us to ask questions that really haven't ever been asked before. So we've developed this program of research, and this is actually captioned here as just a small portion of the larger program. And I'll point you to some resources if you want to look at it later. But understanding sort of what are the prevalence and the characteristics of violence, like what kinds of violence are paramedics experiencing? How are they affected by it? Are there factors that make violence more or less volatile or frequent? And are there risk factors that we can identify? Because this is really about keeping folks safe. And so we need to figure out, are there pieces that we can identify where we can put in additional pieces of additional resources for folks? So let's see, can I change it? Oh, I can't change it. Mandy, can you move it? Oh, yeah. Just go to the next slide if you can. Sorry.
That's okay. More? One more?
Just keep going. Go to the whole next slide. Just click through it. There's a lot of animations there.
Sorry, where do you want me to land at?
Go to the very next slide. Go to slide 13, please.
Oh, I think you're not seeing them change.
Oh, maybe not. Oh, there it is. Okay, I got it. Okay, so thank you. All right, apologies for the technical issues. Okay, so at Peel Region over our study period, there was over 200,000 unique calls and 941 reports of violence. So it doesn't sound like there's a lot of violence, sort of when you think about the overall volume of calls, but when you look at the number of paramedics that were involved in those calls, it's half of the active duty medics were reporting violence at some point during the last 2 years. One of the other really neat things about this data is that it captures just not physical violence. When we think about violence, oftentimes we think about someone threatening to punch us, but it's also capturing verbal abuse and threats and sexual harassment and sexual assault. So it's looking at violence in a more nuanced way than we've ever had a chance to look at before. And 35% of these reports reported more than one kind of violence. Of these reports, 40% reported assault, 81 paramedics reported being injured, 22% of paramedics filed an EVIR, and 10% of active duty paramedics. So while it's not a huge proportion of the volume of calls, the impact is demonstrable and clear. Can you move to the next slide? Thanks. So where is this violence happening? Again, this is a question we've never been able to answer before, and a lot of it's happening at scene, but interestingly, it's continuing. Sometimes you're having stuff happen at the scene, continuing in transit, and then happening even at the hospital. So when we're thinking about where does violence occur, oftentimes we think about in the scene, but frankly, it's happening even when we're perhaps stuck trying to offload our patients at the hospital. Next slide. And 30% of all violence happened at least partially in the hospital. Another really, really interesting thing that we found is that for those of us who are female or are people of color, or that we have or gender diverse or any of these sorts of things, we find that we can't have violence targeted specifically at us. And so we were able to identify in the free text narratives 30% of calls had sexist language, 16% had people using racial slurs, and then 3% had homophobic insults and slurs in them. So when we think about violence, the ways in which words are used are powerful, and they can be really impactful for folks that are trying to just render us assistance. Next slide. So what do we know about risk factors? When is this violence happening? Well, we found that generally violence is happening at restaurants and bars and on the street more often in the over afternoons and overnights, and then into people who had a primary problem code of intoxication, mental health concerns, or altered mental status. Adult males were more likely to be reported as perpetrators of violence. Next slide. When we're thinking about behavioral health, so that is mental health concerns, substance use concerns, it's only a small portion of all 911 calls, but it was 45% of the violence reports and 59% of assaults. So when we think about risk to paramedics, that these calls end up having a really disproportionately high level of violence reported compared to lots of other problem codes. Next. All right, so here are our key findings, and I'm cognizant of the time. So 48% of the workforce reported being violent, 40% report documented an assault, 80% of the violence was being perpetrated by patients. A lot of it involved violence in a hospital, and mental health and substance use was really prevalent in these concerns. And this all adds up to a paramedic reporting violence every 46 hours and physically harmed every 9 days. And I just want to underscore that this is an underreport. We're absolutely sure that there's violence happening that wasn't reported. So this is at best an underestimation. So where do we go from here? Well, we have some evidence now. So we have some ways in which we could potentially develop mitigation strategies. We've found some ways, and we're continuing to work on ways to support paramedics post-incident and making sure that they feel like they're getting the support and the resources they need. Mandy already mentioned that there's some legislative energy, and then continuing to gather more data. We're always looking for partners so that all of us are stronger than any of us. And if you have interest in this work, if you want to learn more, if you want to deploy some of this with your folks, please stay in touch and let us know. Next slide. So that's our contact information. You feel free to reach out at any point. And then we do have a website. All of our articles, all of our social media, summaries of the posters that we've done and the presentations at conferences are all available there at www.protectparamedics.com. So that has a wealth of information, far more than we could jam into a 30-minute presentation. So please use that and stay in touch if you want to answer, you have any questions that we can answer. Thank you.
Well, wow, that was incredible. Elizabeth, Mandy, Justin, great information. I see that John Kramer has a question. So John, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Not a question, but a comment and an expression of great support for what you've done, not only on the issue, but the ways that you have approached it. I'm the former director of the National Office of EMS at NHTSA in the United States, and there are several federal and EMS organizations that are working on this right now. And I just wanted to warn you, expect contact from some of those folks, because I'll be sharing your information. This is fabulous. Thank you.
Awesome.
Any connection you can help us make would be greatly appreciated.
See, I told you we have some big hitters on this program. There he is, right there. John, thank you so much for your comment and for that connection. My question was, I mean, it's great to see the detail, because we always hear that things happen, but not until we understand the call type, what's happening, where it's happening. You really can't make any improvement or any kind of mitigation strategies like you mentioned without knowing the information. So my question for you is, this form, is it a form that they go back to the to the fire department in our case, and they would open up the desktop and they would just click through the form? Is that how that works?
It's embedded in the ePCR. So when you're filling out the PCR in the truck, it says, did you experience violence on this call? If they tick yes, it pops up. They don't have to go back to the base to fill out a second piece of information.
Oh, that's incredible. Beautifully done. Okay, that answered my question.
I was going to say,
Mandy.
And most of the information, and I know it would be different for you, but for us, there's certainly Ministry of Health legislated information that has to go into that report. So we actually just auto-populate all of the patient information, call times, dispatch, like call number.
Beautiful.
That auto-populates. So the medic is only focusing on their experience, what happened to them, because that's what matters to them.
At the moment, or at least timely. Yeah. Very good. So I know we're a little short, but I want to get Frank in. Frank, unmute yourself. Thanks for your question.
Okay. Yeah. Just.
Oh, that's that's Dr. Pepe.
Yeah.
Frank opinion. Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, I have a friend. Yeah. Well, as you know, we don't have. There's a stereotype of how we have a very polite society down here, and we don't have any violence against the paramedics in this area. So, we're really glad to learn from you. But what I did want to bring up is that this is great to document it and so on. What I am concerned about, if an event does happen, do you have training? Because several of the people have been very proactive over the last 10 years here of setting up classes to teach paramedics about verbal judo, actual actions to take, evasive actions in several of the cities we've worked out of. And just want to know if you're also implementing that as well, because I think no matter what you do to document it, something's going to happen to them. So how do we protect them?
Yep. Absolutely. So funny you say that because I have a very large council report that's due at midnight tonight on specifically that topic. So we did recognize that we needed to better train paramedics. It was through the external violence incident report, but more than that, it was
Yeah.
paramedics being willing to come forward and have debriefs with me after incidents that they felt went wrong.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me listening to dozens and dozens of these debriefs over the years that the situations playing armchair quarterback were actually all quite avoidable, and was evident there was an elevation
Yeah.
in behavior and risk, but
Yeah.
the paramedics, for desire to care for the patient, fear of legal repercussions should they leave the patient or delay care, and just fear of, and really not having the knowledge as to like when there's a slow escalation, when is it time to leave the call, like when is it time to leave scene or call for police.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just that we've got to be on another meeting about
Oh, yeah.
But what I was going to say to you was that so part of it, there are some good models down here, just so you're aware of that. I'm sorry for the background noise here. Okay, let me turn something off here. There are some good models we can offer to you. Then the other issue is the psychological aspect, the PTSD or whatever from that event that we should be addressing. So this is great to have the data. I'm a person of action, and that's just want to at least throw that out, and we have some good models for you. And with that, I have to transition over to the other. Okay, Peter, we got to get there.
Yes. Thank you so much for your commentary. And I think that as we end, I would love to say that there seems like there's a lot of collaboration here. I mean, I personally would love to have that form available to my folks. So if there's a way of kind of us discussing more offline, I'm sure a lot of people on this call are probably wondering, hey, how do we embed that into our EPCR, right? And there's some big players around the country that I think can make that happen, but we want to make sure that it's done in a way that maybe even you guys can gather that research, and so it's like one big repository rather than different siloed places.
Absolutely.
So maybe we can have some
ESO is very
conversations.
familiar with this form, so I don't know if you're an ESO subscriber or not, but
that's what we use. Yeah, we use it. We use ESO. Okay. All right. So are you saying that if we make contact with them that they are building this in, or?
Not yet, but maybe if they get some pressure.
Hey, okay, we can pressure. Okay. All right. So how about this? I'll be in touch with you guys offline. But before we end, let me give you guys the last word. You're talking to a bunch of EMS medical directors, a bunch of EMS leaders across the state and across the country. Who wants to give the last word?
Mandy?
It's a lot of pressure right now. Oh man. My last word is, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because we all work with and care about people that or care about these people we work with, and many of them we love. And this topic matters, and preventing violence against paramedics matter because they do a great thing every single day when they go to work, and they don't deserve to be treated like this, and they can't provide the best medical care to patients when this is what they're experiencing. And it's a very addressable problem, and I think we've actually demonstrated that in Peel.
Beautiful. Way to go. That was very well said, and I think we're all listening with our ears are open, and we're open to working together. So I'll be in touch with you guys, and again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be in contact.
All right, take care.
Okay,
All right,
bye.
bye everybody. All right, and Dr. Jameson will take us over to the big show, and we'll see you guys.